And I have also an amazing group of advocates that I'm honored to be introducing today. We are actually missing a couple of people. They are running a little bit late, possibly, so they will pop in as we go. But for right now, I'd like to introduce right next to me, Marc Cooke, Executive Director of Wolves of the Rockies. We have Kim Bean, the Vice President of Wolves of the Rockies, that appears to be sitting in an airport ordering food because she's on her way here for the live event. We have Loren Taylor from Wyoming Untrapped, the Executive Director. Welcome, Loren. And Casey York, my bud, from Trap Free Montana Public Lands, also the Executive Director and very good friends of ours. And then we also have Kristin Combs. There you are. Sorry, I didn't have you on my screen for a second there. From Wyoming Wildlife Advocates. Again, the other two should be joining us. We have Talisi Brooks joining us from Western Watersheds, and we have Suzanne Stone, the founder of the International Wildlife Coexistence Network. Not sure exactly where they are, but I think we should probably get started so we can stay on schedule. I'm going to jump out of this screen in a minute and leave this guy here, and then I'm going to pop back in a little while to do the Q&A. So I don't think we've organized an order to start in, so I'm going to start from my left. And oh, wait, here's Talasi. Hold on, let's let her come in, and then we'll. Hey, Talasi, how you doing? We just introduced you, so everybody knows who you are. We're about to start, and if each of you would introduce yourself and talk for 5 or 10 minutes about what you're doing and where you are.
Most of the Rockies is supposed to start.
Oh, you're supposed to start. Okay, so
Susan is en route.
Okay, great. Susan is en route, we just heard. Okay, so Marc is going to start. I'm going to jump out of the screen and let him do his thing, and I will be back to talk to you all once everybody's done. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're all well. Thank you for participating in this. Thanks, Apex and Plan B, for inviting us back and for all they've done. I just kind of want to set the stage for what's going on in Montana. Currently, we had legislation last January through April. Our legislators meet every 2 years. And what we took away from that was there's consequences to your vote. So let me explain what happened. You have the House of Representatives that swung to the right, and not only to the right, but the extreme right, and they're mostly Republican. The Senate went to the right, and they are extreme and Republican. And the fail-safe we always had was a Democratic governor for the last 16 years while wolves were being reintroduced and established in Montana. And although the situation wasn't perfect, at least we had some, we had a stop that we could turn to stop some of the madness. Well, that stopped. As many of you know, we have a governor who is a trapper and who has killed a Yellowstone wolf. So he's definitely not favorable to wolves. So what's going on in Montana is this. The legislation was passed with no resistance as far as a Democratic or Republican governor. Many people showed up in support of wolves on many bills, whether it be the trapping bill, the snaring bill, what we were calling the kill all wolf bills. And they seem to be coming out of one area of Montana with Senator Brown and Representative Fielder, who is very far right, anti-government, anti-federal government especially. So make a long story short, there was a lot of resistance on our side for these bills, but make no mistake, the stars aligned for the antis, and they pretty much got everything they wanted. What happened after the session was the governor appointed new commissioners. Actually, it was during the session, the tail end of the session. He appointed new Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks commissioners. Well, let me just tell you what's going on there. You have one that is a livestock producer. You have two that are outfitters. You have one that's a leader in the Safari Club International. And I guess at the time, 4 out of the 5 commissioners were anti-wolf. So not only did the legislative body be able to do whatever they want to do and pass the laws they want, Gianforte set up a commission that would reinforce whatever it was he wanted to do. You know, he's paying back his friends for being elected governor. The director of Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is a past employee of Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And I'll be quite frank with you, he's in over his head, but he's the perfect puppet. He'll do whatever the department wants him to do. To make matters worse, you have senior leadership within the Department of Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks that is anti-wolf, anti-bear, anti-carnivore. So I'd like to touch a little bit on why that is. And actually a couple ladies brought it up in the prior event. It comes down to funding. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is funded with license revenue. And it's always been funded by license revenue, whether it be Pittman Robertson money, hunting, trapping, fishing revenue from the fees from license revenue. That's the majority of the money that comes into Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So what's happening is the department is catering to the individuals that are paying their bills. We have tried on several occasions to install a mechanism that would give the non-consumptive community a seat at the table. And we had it in place. Now, tell me this wasn't deliberate. We had it in place, and it was supposed to go before the commission last November. They canceled it in December, or late November, early December. And it was the wolf stamp. And it took us 4 years to get in place. It was actually going to provide money to help wolves and other carnivores in Montana. And it was squashed because the department, the senior leadership within the department didn't want it. So what I'm saying is things are getting worse. In the next session, I honestly expect poisoning to be on the table. We'll have longer hunting seasons. I wouldn't be surprised if gassing isn't on the table too. But here's what we need to do. We need to do a couple things. We need to change the funding mechanism for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. More importantly is we need to elect people who see our point of view and who have the courage to promote our point of view. And lastly, we need everybody to engage, whether it be now at the state level or at the federal level. I encourage you to go to relistwolves.org and sign up if you haven't already, and tell the Biden administration this has got to stop. If people are counting on Montana to manage large carnivores properly using science-based information, it's not going to happen. We have no choice but to reach to the Fed, at least for a buffer to give us some time to get our legs under us and come up with a federal plan, which is already in the works in the Senate, to protect the large carnivores. And make no mistake about this. Today it's wolves. Tomorrow it'll be grizzly bears. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Kim Beam. She is our expert on Yellowstone, and she'll kind of bring you up to speed on Yellowstone. But thanks again, everybody.
Cheers, everybody. How you doing? I'm Kim Beam with Wolves of the Rockies. You know, that can't be good. Can you hear me now? I'm unmuted.
Sorry, everybody.
You know, it's interesting. I would imagine
There you go.
that, like, you're trying to.
You got me?
Again?
You got me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Looks like everybody else can hear, so I guess we're good. Right?
But you have a lot of background noise.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I am apologizing right now. Does this help at all?
Continue to try to get in. I'll tell you what's going on briefly, what I know with Yellowstone, although Kim is the expert. Okay, you have 2 areas above Yellowstone, and we've been fighting for the last 10 years or so with other organizations to get quotas in Yellowstone, just on the border of Yellowstone. There's 313 and 316s. They call them Wolf Management Units, or WMUs. So we had it down to one wolf in each unit. But because we lost a Democratic governor and it went to a Republican governor, what they did was, because they have two outfitters on the commission, they have a safari club guy. Listen, we even have a lady that makes her living on social media as a trophy killer. So the deck is stacked firmly against wolves and other carnivores because they eat elk and what they want to kill. So what happened was Commissioner Tabor disregarded all the proposals that Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks brought forward and scooped away the quotas that we had in place. So now we have no quotas in place. And I want to say as of yesterday or so, we've lost many Yellowstone wolves. I would probably say the number is around 20 wolves have been killed in 313, 316, and 310. And it's all because of special interest. Ladies and gentlemen, this is being driven firmly by the trapping industry, by the outfitters. Montana Outfitters and Guides Association is running Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks because the commissioner that put these new proposals into place, guess what he does for a living? He's an outfitter. So what is he doing? He's taking care of himself and his clients, and it's being done through Montana Outfitters and Guides Association. Yeah, sure.
Casey York from Treffy, Montana. Why don't you take it from here?
All right. Am I good to go here? Thumbs up. Okay, thanks. I'm Casey York. I'm president and founder of Trap Free Montana and Trap Free Montana Public Lands out of the Bitterroot. Despite our side rallying in opposition before the Montana 2021 legislature, and again in the majority of—
Seems like we're having a problem with microphones right now.
I think it's us. They can hear each other.
You guys can hear each other because we cannot hear you over here. Oh wait, hold on.
I think it's us.
Is it us?
Yeah, they're safe.
Okay, I apologize. We have so many computers running in here. I'm sorry, Casey. Would you mind just starting that again? I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. I have to find my cheat sheet. Okay, so I'm just interrupt me if it's not working right here. I'm Casey York, president and founder of Trap Free Montana and Trap Free Montana Public Lands out of the Bitterroot. And despite our side rallying in opposition before the Montana 2021 legislature, and again, in the majority of roughly 25,000 public comments to the Fish and Wildlife Commission, basically the inmates were turned loose in the asylum. Not to be outdone by Idaho, the Montana Fish and Wildlife Commission then upped the ante, making it all the worse or better, depending upon which side you're on for these bloodthirsty, revengeful wolf haters. Night hunting, use of artificial bait, infrared, shooting wolves over bait. The bounty bill we killed in 2019 passed and this year, and wolf killers can now get reimbursed for traps, for ammo, for clothing, game cams, ATV, truck payments, you name it. Currently in Montana, they can get at least $500 from an Idaho organization. Over in Idaho, they can get like 5 times that amount. The wolf trapping season has been extended a month, starting 2 weeks earlier, now November 29th, and running over 2 weeks later to like March 15th, which is certain to trap well-staged pregnant wolves. Snares, which are already legal for numerous other species, became legal for wolves, this through the legislature. Previously, they could only use these massive leg hole traps for wolves. Wolves can be pre-baited, like with horse meat, which is a favorite. They can get habituated to being fed, watched over the game cams, and then easily trapped or gunned down. Trapped wolves are allowed to suffer for up to 48 hours. And then exploiting on the loyalty of wolves to their pack, trappers like to leave the trapped wolf, who's known often as the Judas wolf, to draw others in to the countless number of traps and snares that they can set. The wolf quota has quadrupled from 5 wolves total in Montana to now 10 per trapper and 10 per hunter, so 20 wolves each. However, we had a recent win. Not only were the new wolf trapping regulations in violation of the 2015 Lynx Settlement Agreement, notice was given for intent to sue, to which we were party of, on the failure to protect ESA-threatened Canada lynx and grizzlies. Again, we dominated in public comment during the short notice for the Wildlife Commission hearing on October 28th. And honestly, to avoid litigation, they voted to prohibit snares for wolves on public lands in lynx protection zones and default the wolf trapping start date to December 31st in and near grizzly recovery zones. What's so cool about this is where allegedly 90% of the wolves reportedly are in Montana. How the sponsor of these bills responded was telling, both in his rudeness in his public comment, refusal to stop talking and was told 3 times, your time's up, and his rage. He will come back in a vengeance. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. What's not cool is, aside from some of the loopholes, they did not close the wolf trapping date any sooner than the March 15th, which puts these ravenous grizzlies, who will be emerging, if not already emerged from hibernation, puts them at risk of being trapped. And it also puts the public at risk of encountering a trapped grizzly. A quota of 450 wolves is supposed to trigger a commission review when that quota is reached of 100. Let me backtrack. When 450 wolves are reported killed, it's supposed to trigger a commission review, and the same thing applies to X number of wolves per region. The question is, do you think all the wolves killed will be reported, and why would they? Who's going to know, and who's going to tell? Governor Giannaforte, who signed all these anti-wildlife bills, he set a prime example of what happens to poachers when he illegally trapped and killed a collared wolf, who just so happened to be a Yellowstone wolf known as Max. Governor Giannaforte received no punishment, and in destroying Max, who was worth far more alive than dead, Governor Giannaforte stated just how proud he was for his actions, and he was allowed to keep Max. Thanks.
Loren, you are back, right? I know you got somehow booted off. I apologize for that. Are you there, Loren?
Sorry, yes, I am here.
There you are.
All right.
Okay.
Hi. My internet is a little bit finicky, so I'm going to try to keep my camera on. We'll see how it goes. While I was disconnected, Kristin, did you have a chance to speak yet on Wyoming?
No, you're the first one to go for a Wyoming overview, so
All right. Cool. All right, sounds good. All right, I will just jump into it. So we are discussing the state of wolves in Wyoming. It's a little bit different than Idaho and Montana that have recently passed new regulations. We have regulations that have been set for some time, though management authority has shifted back and forth between the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the state Game and Fish Agency. Currently, wolf management is under the authority of the Wyoming Game and Fish Department within the trophy game management area. So in Wyoming, management is split up in 2 different ways. Wolves are being managed in a trophy game management area, which is in the northwestern region of the state, and it only encompasses 15% of the state. The rest of the state is managed as a predator zone where wolves are considered predatory animals. In the trophy game management area, wolves are being managed as at the minimum viable population, or minimum numbers management, which means this is the minimum number of individuals that needs to be alive at a given time for a species to persist in the long term. And this number was set by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service when wolves were delisted in Wyoming and management was given over to the state agencies. So what that means is that statewide in Wyoming, they are managing wolves to have 15 breeding pairs and 150 wolves. And this includes Yellowstone National Park and the Wind River Reservation. Within Wyoming Game and Fish Management areas, which is the trophy game management, they are required to have 10 breeding pairs and no more than 100 wolves. Currently, they have a 10 wolf buffer, so they're supposed to be managing above minimum numbers in the 5-year post delisting review period. And so right now they are managing for 100. Their target is 160 wolves. In the predator zone, however, wolves are not counted or even considered in those numbers. Unfortunately, in the predator zone, there are no restrictions for the method of take. Wolves can be taken any time of the year. They basically have no value, and there is no restrictions at all for wolves in that area, and they don't intend, the Game and Fish Agency doesn't intend for them to live very long. That's why they're not included in any of these counts. So within that zone, it's pretty bleak as far as wolves being able to intermingle and for genetic exchange to happen, which is supposed to take place with wolves in order for them to stay delisted in Wyoming. But currently, we don't know what the genetic exchange is. They have not released any of that data, although they will collect it whenever a predatory wolf has been taken. So essentially, what does that mean for Wyoming? Well, the future is pretty bleak right now. Wyoming Game and Fish is still within the 5-year wolf management period. That will end in May of 2022. So currently, the numbers that were released this year, there are 147 wolves. There is a mortality limit of 51 for 2021. The department sees their management style currently as a remarkable success rather than a serious risk to the longevity of the species. Again, they are managing wolves at the minimum viable population number required for them to survive. Once the 5-year obligations are met, it is possible that the department will change their regulations. They could waive the 60 wolf buffer and start managing or allowing for minimum numbers management once again. So essentially, the best thing that could happen for wolves in Wyoming until this review period comes back up is for them to be relisted as a part of the Rocky Mountain Gray Wolf DPS under the 90-day review period. And I'm sure many other people will be speaking to this point throughout this presentation or this roundtable. But I just want everyone to take note of Wyoming while they are considering the 90-day review period. So with the ESA relisting opportunity, you can submit public comments, which is something that is happening. I think a lot of public comments have been submitted already. But one thing to consider is that with this ESA listing with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they are specifically looking for data-heavy information and comments. So while it is really good in some scenarios to have a public comment that is more emotional, in this scenario, we need data and we need hard facts, and we need that information to be included in the public comments that are made in order for them to be counted. And so what's great about Wyoming in this instance is that we know what happens with Wyoming as an example for the last 5 years of what it looks like for a state agency to have unlimited take methods within the predator zone. And keep in mind that whenever you are talking about data and scientific information, that zero data is just as important as data heavy numbers. So within the predator zone, there are very few wolves that are documented there. In most regions of that state, there are 0 wolves that are documented there. And pointing out that information in an area that has unlimited regulation is really important and something that I think we should consider. And I go into much more in depth with this all on our website. It's a little bit heavy for such a short talk, but I encourage everyone to check out our current take action for information regarding the ESA listing and what you can do right now, which I highly, highly, highly encourage everyone to do that and use this as an example of what it could look like in Idaho and in Montana when all of this happens. I'll stop there.
I'm sure we'll get some of that in some of the questions that are coming up. But Kristin, why don't you give us a rundown of what's going on with you?
Great, thank you. Once again, my name is Kristin Combs. I'm the Executive Director at Wyoming Wildlife Advocates. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. We'll see how this goes. Hopefully this works out well. There we go. So really what I just wanted to kind of point out too is that Wyoming has been a little bit of an outlier since day one, in that Idaho and Montana had acceptable management plans and Wyoming never did. In fact, wolves were delisted in Wyoming well after Idaho and Montana's plans were both approved. And one of the reasons that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service didn't want to delist wolves in Wyoming was because they were going to be listed as predators in most of the state, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service didn't want that, and they knew that the state was going to manage down to this minimum level. Eventually, a court decision overturned that, and wolves were delisted. So this is just a little bit of a timeline. You'll see this information also in your handout that is posted on the Sedona Wolf Week site. So they've been on and off the endangered species list, and when they are on the endangered species list, so they were delisted in 2012, and then they were relisted in 2013, 14, and 15, and then delisted again in 2017. And we do see numbers go up when that happens. So far in 2021, these are where wolves have been killed. As Loren was saying, the Wyoming Game and Fish Department has a trophy management zone up near Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park. The rest of the state is all predatory area, and they can be killed at any time. So far, all we know is that 28 have been killed in the predatory zone this year. I'm sure that number is much higher now. These numbers are a couple weeks old, so and those don't always get reported, of course. You'll see that area number 1 that's right outside of Yellowstone National Park to the northeast, 7 wolves have been killed there already. And that area 1 and 2, which is the area just below it, and then you'll see right to the east of Grand Teton National Park, there's 9 wolves that have been killed there so far. Those are some of the first areas to fill up for the quotas. And each of those have a quota that is set. And once that quota is reached, then the area becomes closed and no more hunting can occur there. But the numbers that we get, you're never sure if that's actually the numbers. Like AC was saying, reporting is sketchy, as we know sometimes. So, and this hunting season will remain open until December 31st. Except for the region where it says there's 3 wolves that have been killed right now. That one is open until March 31st. That's region 13. And that was to supposedly protect a bighorn sheep herd, which wolves are not preying upon. So we kind of have been asking the question, like, how do wolf pack dynamics change outside of Yellowstone National Park with hunting added? I know this is kind of busy, but basically, we've got a small sample size so far. So we've looked at pretty much just since 2018, when wolves were delisted after 2017. This is going to give us some hard data. So in 2018, there were 177 total wolves killed. 159 of those were killed by human reasons. And we saw 20% of packs increasing in size and then 34% decreasing, and 20% of packs were eliminated at that point. In 2019, we had 311 wolves total. There was 96 that were killed. 88 of those were by human purposes. And then you'll see, so that was a little bit lower year. So 2019 had lower quotas and fewer wolves were killed in those times. And so we did see some increase in the pack size, which is to be expected as there's fewer, important wolves in each pack getting taken out. And then in 2020, we saw an increase in quotas again, and we start to see a decrease in the size of packs and more like smaller packs. And it's also, some scientific information out there exists to show that smaller wolf packs tend to prey upon livestock and get into trouble more often, oftentimes because they're led by maybe inexperienced wolves that don't have an alpha male or female that's been in place for a while. So, and in 2020, there were 111 total wolves killed that year, and 104 were by humans. So human death is the number one cause of wolves in Wyoming. This is some data we received from a FOIA request, or a Wyoming Public Records request from the state of Wyoming, for how wolves are taken. We wanted to know how many are trapped, how many are killed by firearm. Rifle is the most common firearm, used, or high-powered rifles and other rifles. You'll see the aerial control. That's all mostly from APHIS and Wyoming Wildlife Services. And then also a fair amount are trapped. There is no trapping within the trophy game management area, but there is outside in the predatory area. And the real concerning category is the other, and that's probably most likely pups gassed in dens by Wyoming Wildlife Services. So anything goes when they're being removed as predatory animals. And unfortunately, our wolves here we in Wyoming have never let them get to a certain point. They've just wanted to keep them at that 160 number, and that's all we're allowed to have. There are many places in Wyoming that could benefit from having wolves. Sheridan, Lander, Buffalo, all those places could have a really robust tourist economy if wolves were present, but the state won't allow them to live there. So this is what heavy-handed state management looks like. And once again, that comes from our commissioners, similar to other states. So finding different funding methods, and Loren is exactly right. The best thing that could happen for wolves right now is for them to be put back on the endangered species list and protected by the law once again. I think there's some argument out there that if they're protected by the Endangered Species Act, then, that makes people more hostile toward them. That is just not true. I mean, the hostility here toward wolves in Wyoming has never been as bad as it is right now. So, anyway, I 100% encourage, reach out to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, provide data to them, and let's get wolves back on the endangered species list, and visit relistwolves.org so that we can have some outside influence, because it's not going to happen from Wyoming.
Thank you, Kristin. Thank you so much. I'm actually going to jump back to Kim because she didn't get a shot earlier, and we had a little issue with the sound. I'm not sure whose end it was on, but Kim, can you, how's your sound now? Kim? Kim disappeared again. Okay. So we'll come back to you, Kim, if you can hear us. Wait, here she is. 1 minute. She's working on something. Kim, I'm going to keep moving and we will come back to you. Talasi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Talisi Brooks. I am a staff attorney with Western Watersheds Project here in Boise. And I'm sorry, I had hoped to have a nice PowerPoint for you all today, but the week got away from me. So here we are. And so I'm going to give you a basic overview of what's been going on with wolves in Idaho for the past year. And I'm going to, and Suzanne Stone, who I'm really glad is here as well, and who I work with a lot on wolf issues, will fill in whatever I miss. So, since wolves were delisted in 2011, they've been managed by the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. And the Department of Fish and Game has been allowing more and more wolf killing by hunting and trapping, and has been increasing the season. Even before this year, there was an 11 to 12 month hunting and trapping season throughout most of the state. So, wolves were being increasingly heavily targeted. And I believe it was in 2020, we had the most wolf mortality that has ever been documented in a single year since wolves were delisted, with 583 wolf deaths in a single year, which is really a lot. Because this amount of wolf killing wasn't enough for the Idaho legislature, which is also dominated by ranching interests, in this year, 2021, the legislature passed S-1211. And this was a bill that did several pretty interesting things. First of all, it sort of took over some functions that had been previously the job of the Idaho Fish and Game Commission, which is the body that oversees the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. And it sort of dictated wolf management. So it said there could be no harvest limits for wolves. And it directed that wolves should be treated like other wild canids, which allows them to be treated essentially like coyotes. So it directs that they can still be managed as big game, which is what their classification technically is, but allows them to be treated like coyotes, which are predatory wildlife. And that increased and changed the kinds of methods that could be used to kill them. So now, they can be killed by night hunting, and various other methods like that. Potentially, if Idaho Wildlife Services decides to start using poisons to kill coyotes again in Idaho, those could be used for wolves too under S-1211. And another thing this bill did, was it increased funding for the Idaho Wolf Depredation Control Board, which is it's like basically a funding mechanism for killing wolves in Idaho. It funnels money. Typically, it has funneled money to wildlife services. Now it also, I believe, funds some wolf killing by the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. And under S-1211, it also allowed the board to hire private contractors to kill wolves. And what we understood this meant, and what it actually has come to mean, is that the Wolf Control Board could give money to the Foundation for Wildlife Management, which is the nonprofit trapping organization that pays glorified wolf bounties to trappers that Casey was talking about earlier. They're based in Pend Oreille, Idaho, and they have been active in Idaho for several years. They're actually responsible for about half of the wolf deaths, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, that have occurred since delisting in Idaho. And so they're very efficient. And in Idaho, originally a trapper could claim reimbursement of like $1,000, I think was the maximum. And now I believe that's been increased to $2,500 per wolf. So that's quite a lot of money. So what did we do in response to this? We looked at, S1211, and we also looked at the new wolf laws in Montana. And, as you've heard from our colleagues in Wyoming, wolf management in Wyoming has always been terrible. And so first, a group of folks, the Center for Biological Diversity, the Sierra Club, and the Humane Society drafted a petition to have wolves be relisted either in the Northern Rockies or else in a Western DPS. And Western Watersheds Project, joined by 70 other groups, many of whom are represented in this webinar, we also filed a petition later to list wolves in the Western DPS, which would encompass most wolves in the West. And so those petitions were successful, and the Fish and Wildlife Services issued a positive 90-day finding where it said that we'd shown significant information that listing wolves might be warranted. And this is what sparked the status review that's currently underway. So following the status review that's happening now, in which you can submit comments on regulations.gov, there will be a proposed rule of some kind that we're anticipating in May or June. And that rule will either say that the species is, or the DPS, is warranted, not warranted, or warranted but precluded for protection. And at that point, when the draft rule comes out, there will be another opportunity for public comment. So that's where you all come in. Not only can you submit scientific information to the status review right now, but you also will have an opportunity to comment on the draft rule whenever that comes out. And that is when we need every person who cares about wolves to raise their voice and get their comment in and have their voice be heard in the process. Because the Fish and Wildlife Service needs to know that there's broad support for wolves and that they really need protection under the ESA. It's my firm belief that unless wolves are protected under the ESA, unless the federal government is overseeing this process, Idaho will drive them to extirpation in this state. They do not care about wolves, and they aren't trying to manage them in a responsible way. So with that, on that cheery note, I'll turn it over to Suzanne.
Thanks, Talasi. You did well covering the ground here on the political end. I just want to kind of add a few details in that changes that we've seen happen over the course of the last year. So one significant change that we've seen is the aggressiveness of wildlife services going after wolves, and especially after wolf pups. I don't think I've ever seen in my 30 plus years working here in the region, the wildlife services preemptively go in and kill wolf pups in their dens, and to do so without any type of livestock conflicts going on in the area. Thanks to some really great volunteers who are doing FOIA requests. Pam, if you're out there listening, you're a rock star. There's a really great amount of information coming to us, and we're starting to tie those loose ends together to figure out, who and why things are happening the way they are behind the scenes. So the Foundation for Wildlife Management, I met with their president of their board last week, and they are very aggressively going after new bounty programs. They're now working in Montana, which is why Montana has had the bounty program extended there. One thing that I did learn from them is that in Idaho, they said that more so than their organization, the Idaho Cattlemen's Association was responsible for Senate Bill 1211. And so it's more than just, coming from this trapping organization, an anti-wolf organization, but it's also coming from mainstream agriculture, and that seems to be what's driving it. The Fish and Game Commission opposed Senate Bill 1211, primarily because they were already killing a lot of wolves and they didn't want the legislature in charge of managing wildlife in the state. And so the legislature just plowed right over that. And the Idaho Wildlife Federation came out in opposition to it. Certainly the tribes, the public at large, it didn't matter. There's a very small group of people who are very determined to exterminate as many wolves as possible. And from what we've seen from the documents that we've been able to read through so far, their goal is to kill 80% or more of our wolf population per year, which will drive them to complete eradication in our region. So we are calling for emergency relisting. Under the 2009 delisting rule, the service actually has a statement in that rule that says that they have the ability, and I will quote from it here, that I'll even put it in the sidebar for you guys, and then a link back to the rule, but it says that, let's see, and this pertains to Wyoming, so I'll read the whole thing. While our post-delisting monitoring window is 5 years, meaningful changes in state law or management objectives that would significantly increase the threat to the wolf population could lead to reconsideration of listing, including the potential for emergency relisting at any point. For example, if a state changed their regulatory framework to authorize the unlimited and unregulated taking of wolves, a condition we have previously determined threatened a wolf population, emergency listing would be immediately pursued. Pretty straightforward there. And so what we're asking the service to do is that Idaho has no limit on the number of wolves that are being killed. There is, at best, minimal monitoring going on. We have no idea how many wolves are being also illegally poisoned. But when you have all of these aggressive type killing wolf pups and dens, the bounty program, which they've increased, hiring private killers to go out and kill as many wolves as they possibly can. So they now have contractors that are doing that. It is a straight on assault on the wolf population, and I don't see an end to it. They are not going to stop until somebody tells them to stop. And I think that the service has to be the adult in the room, step back up to their commitment. They're responsible for bringing wolves back to the Northern Rockies. They're responsible for enforcing the rule that they used to delist them from federal protection. And we all told them in 2008, that this was going to happen. That Idaho could not be trusted to manage its wolves. And unfortunately, Montana has followed suit. Now, I'm going to stop there and then see if we have questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. Amazing presentation yesterday, by the way. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Kim, you have a few words
Hi,
to say?
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. There you are.
I found the tornado shelter. Hopefully they won't kick me out of here. I'm trying to get to you guys in LA. Guys, I apologize, and I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity again. But so for me, Yellowstone is a big issue, right? And I'm not saying that they're the only wolves that matter, because they're not. We want everything to be happening for all the wolves. But for me, in my brain and the way that I look at things, we have to personalize our this situation. People don't seem to respond unless it somehow is personalized. Our Yellowstone wolves are very personal to us. People that know them, they know them by name. They know them by all these, their colored names, their names that we give them. They're very, very precious and very important. And so, for me, if we can't save our Yellowstone wolves, we're gonna be hell bent trying to save any. So the problem that we've got in Montana, same thing as Kristin and they're talking about in Wyoming. It's just first of all, we fought for a decade to get quotas around Yellowstone National Park. We had 313, 316, 310. We tried like crazy. We finally got our quotas. And we had it down, I know it's not 0 wolves, but we had it down to 1 wolf in each one of these quota areas, wolf management units around the park. That saved a whole lot of wolves for no apparent reason at all. There's no reason at all that the commission should have lifted it, but they took away all the quotas. So they made all of it just wolf unit, management unit 3, well, it's basically region 3. And they're saying you can take 82 wolves, I think it is, quote me, I think that's correct, in that region. So they're baiting them out of the park. They're night hunting. They're doing everything in their power to pull our wolves out of Yellowstone National Park. It's a vendetta. And so we need everybody we can to speak up, speak out, do everything you can, to Deb Haaland, to President Biden, as everybody's saying. I mean, I think we're all in the same space here, right? We all want these animals protected, but when you can night hunt with night vision goggles, when you can bait the animals out of the park, when we've got guys on horseback standing right on the park boundary and those inside the park pushing wolves outside, we have a problem. And so that's what we're fighting for. And, we've got relistwolves.org, which will help you. We've got, Wolves of the Rockies, obviously. We've got our podcast. I do a daily podcast as well, just on Facebook, just to kind of update everybody and get everybody moving a little bit. But, All Things Wolf and Wild is our podcast. The problem we've got out there is we've got Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks that is staying silent. They're not coming out. They're not giving the information that we're requesting over and over and over. We're putting out FOIAs. They're ignoring those FOIAs now. That's freedom of information, right? We should have that. This should be an open door policy. So our states are shutting down. They're literally shutting down. They're not giving us information. So this is a problem. And this is where, instead of just having like Wolves of the Rockies or Trap 3 or anybody else calling the state agencies, we need everybody calling these state agencies and calling them out for closing the door on the constituents that actually put a whole lot of money into preserving this land and conserving our predators and other wildlife. So we got a whole lot of crap going on, as Marc put out, as everybody else on this panel's put out. We need a whole lot of voices, and that's you guys as well as us. We're working everything we can, and open for questions on anybody and anything in the park, outside of the fact that they've killed 61 wolves now in Montana. So they're boosting it.
So I want to jump in for a second, and I'm going to start off with a question, and I just want to put it out there. I mean, this can be overwhelming for people that are watching. I mean, hardcore advocates kind of know what's going on, but Sedona Wolf Week was developed really so that we could reach people that had never been reached before, people that were just interested in trying to help wolves. And I've been out there with Casey and Marc, and I've seen through literally virgin California eyes the hatred. I spent a month in the backwoods out there following trappers around and trying to film them and ask them why they were doing what they were doing. I hardened up real fast and learned a lot of truths. And, so for people around the country that are not on the front lines like you guys, that don't see it like you guys see it, because it's really hard to understand the hate unless you've come face to face with it. And I know that all of you have. So I'm going to ask each of you, what would your message be to people who are living in cities like LA and New York, who don't come across this, that don't deal with that kind of hate? We all love wolves because, we're not dealing with the day-to-day wolf behavior and the wolf haters. So what would your message be, and anyone can start, to people that don't really see or necessarily understand how important it is right now for wolves, and what they can do to help? And I'm going to add to the question by, what have you guys done to make it easy for people to use their voice? Because I know a lot of you are going to say, use your voice, speak up, write a letter, but a lot of people, they get confused. They don't know which website to go to. They don't know what to say. So what is your message to the people that don't really experience the hate that you do, and what can they do about it? And
I'll chime in. So, wolves are wildlife. They live on our public lands largely. And I believe that wolves belong to all of us. I think that a wolf belongs they belong to themselves, first of all, but I think that a person in LA or New York City or wherever has as much of an interest in having wolves be in the United States as any one of us who lives in the Rocky Mountain West. And so you should not be shy about raising your voice to that effect. The only reason there aren't wolves pretty much everywhere in this country is because they were trapped and poisoned to extirpation. So we absolutely, as American citizens, all have a right, in my opinion, to have wolves be here. As far as figuring out about how to participate and how to get involved, I know that Western Watersheds Project sends out action alerts when something that's really important is happening. And we try not to send out too many of those. We try to limit, how much we ask of our supporters. But if you want to sign up to receive our online messenger and our action alerts, that's one way that you can keep abreast of things. And I know that many other groups many other groups on this call also have similar types of information that you can look at. I also think that Suzanne circulated the the link to the federal, the regulations.gov site where you can submit comments. In general, anytime you want to figure out about comment opportunity for something the government is doing, regulations.gov is a very good resource, and it's something that you can use. So if you read the 90-day finding that she circulated on the chat, that will continue to be updated, and that will tell you, when the comment deadlines are too. So you can track it on your own if you're inclined, but we'll also tell you.
I would add to Talisi's statement about that the wolves and wildlife belong to people, but 66% of the state of Idaho is federal public lands, and it belongs to all of us, whether you live here or not. We have one of the wildest landscapes, the largest wilderness national forest area in the lower 48 states. It's and our wolf population at one point was the largest of all of the 3 states in the Northern Rockies. So we have incredible habitat here for wolves and all the other wildlife that occur here. Having intact ecosystems, where we have so much in the way of wilderness. This is a treasure for all of us. It's a national treasure, and it deserves to be protected. And I don't want to see wolves again wiped out from the Western United States, from the Northern Rockies. We can't see this happen again under our watch.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in really quick before it gets crazy loud again, and I'm going to walk away. I piggyback everything else, these guys are saying. It is our land. It's everybody's land. It's our wildlife, and we should be able to protect that. Information. I get a lot of people constantly question me on what do we do? How do we do it? We're a social media generation, right? Everything's social media, information, social media. It's fast. It's furious. So what we've done is we have created an incredible campaign and movement at relistwolves.org, #relistwolves. And the most important thing we've got on that is the information, factual, accurate, to-date information that you guys can actually utilize and move forward with, right? You guys can actually take action. And that's what we need to do throughout this country, throughout this world, because money comes into this country, right? You don't have to be from here to recognize that money comes in. People come here from all over the world to see our wildlife. They spend a whole lot of money, and that speaks very loudly to the administration. So everybody has a voice in this, and they need to start utilizing it. So pop in, take a look at us. I'm on pretty much every morning, Monday through Friday, squawking up a storm, talking to people on Wolves of the Rockies live. And plus we've got our other outlets. But reach out to those of us who have been doing this. Reach out to those of us who actually have been on the ground. Ask us questions. We are here to answer them. We're here to help. We're here to save wolves, and we need you to do it. So That's all I got, y'all. Thank you.
Go ahead, Casey.
All right, thanks. I think one of the first steps is, in order to rectify a problem, people need to know there is a problem. Like when you came over, or people have no idea what's happening. And that's how the people that do know can help. Like on our Facebook page, sometimes it feels like I'm preaching to the choir. They're on our Facebook page for Trap Free Montana Public Lands because they don't like trapping. But to go ahead and try to educate other people what's happening. Like we have our billboard project up, End the Suffering, with the trapped dying wolf. And we've put it along major highways in the state of Montana. And it's been very powerful. We don't want to ever hear someone say, I didn't know trapping still went on. The other thing that for people, everybody can contribute somehow, some way. Contact your Congress, your representatives in Congress, and tell them these are our wildlife. The amount of money and public support to have the wolves reintroduced, and now what's happening to them, and vote. That's the most powerful thing. Even like this last letter, all these senators signed on to thank them. But what about all the ones that didn't sign on, and to call them out? As far as public comment and testifying, I think most of us are uncomfortable and don't know what to say. But to speak from your heart and to show up, that's what carries the most weight. They're not necessarily listening to what you have to say so much, but it's very powerful to see all those people in there. You're conveying a message. It matters, whether it's to the legislators or your Fish and Wildlife, Fish and Game committee. That's what's really matters the most. And we also we edit, or we'll review people's comments if they're, but those personal ones are so much more powerful. We do not recommend signing on to a petition. Of those 25,000 comments that went into Montana's Fish and Wildlife Commission, with the majority in opposition to the wolf killing and all these horrendous methods they were going to use, they said like 19,000 were form letters. Same thing with what's going into, sometimes it'll go into this relisting, and they count it as one. It's much better for you to, use your own words and say how this impacts me, why this matters to me. That's our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Anybody else want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback off of what Kim said. Last legislative session in Montana was a disaster, but something good did happen from it. Originally, last December, Wolves of the Rockies assembled a group of people, interested people. Some were, veterans, and some were just learning. And what we did was we held monthly or weekly meetings for legislation, sometimes more. And what we found out quickly is there's a lot of people who want to contribute and help and call senators and representatives and let their opinion be known, but they just don't know how to do it. So what we did is we switched gears and we kind of became a shepherd or a tutor to show people how to do things and make them more effective. So this leads me to next June 16th and June 17th. We're going to have a Yellowstone Wolf Summit. And part of that summit is going to involve, and it's going to be in Gardner, part of that summit is going to involve teaching people and organizing people. So when the next commissioners meeting happens for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, okay, at the next commissioners hearing at FWP, you'll know how to engage, and you'll be able to lean on Wolves of the Rockies for information. Then fast forward 6 months from that time frame, July, August, we're going to go into another legislative session. And we want to do the same thing all over again. We want to teach people how to be more involved, be patient, be respectful to them. You're going to make mistakes, but don't worry, we all make mistakes. But at the end of the day, you're going to learn the system, how legislation works, and you're going to learn how to be more effective. it took us, we've been in business for 10 or 15 years, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't have anybody to teach me, and I had to learn just by doing. And it took me a good 3 to 5 years to understand what's going on and how to counter it. So I encourage anybody, if you want to join us in Yellowstone and learn a little bit about the next legislative session and the next commissioners hearing for wolves, where they're going to be wanting to kill more wolves. If you want to be more effective, think about joining us in Yellowstone. Hit our webpage or send us an email, Kim or I an email, and we'll hook up with you and we'll give you the information necessary to join us and to effectively become a more effective advocate. Anybody else?
So I think we're coming to the end of the session here. We're going to go into the movies in a little while, but does anybody have a closing comment they'd like to make before we end this session? I think everybody kind of did their closing comment.
I would like to.
I have one, which is that in terms of, so as we've all said, you know, I think that the best shot wolves have at continuing to exist in the Northern Rockies is being relisted under the ESA. And this is the time to speak up for wolves. Now and in the next 12 months when the draft rule issues, this is when you have the opportunity to make your voice heard. And there are a bunch of things you can do. The comment periods are really important, but even contacting your Congress people, you know, essentially doing everything that we can do to put pressure on the Fish and Wildlife Service through politics, through the comment process, through all of that stuff to make the right decision. This is the time to do it. So think about what you have to offer this, and please do everything in your power to help us change our course.
Casey, go right ahead.
Thanks, Mark. I just wanted to share something that I shared last year, and especially as we're all struggling with this war declared on wolves. And the one thing that really inspires me is the buffalo. And for those that don't know, last year in the summer in the Bitterroot in Montana, a white buffalo was born, and that's very rare. It's only something like 1 in every 10 million are white. And this one was even more rare because it was a female. Sorry about my dog in the background. I don't know if you can all hear him, but they're very sacred to the Native Americans. And the story goes that this white or this woman, beautiful woman dressed in white, appeared to the Lakota tribe and said, if you continue on your path the way Earth intended, you will no longer be starving. And as she disappeared, a white buffalo calf manifested, surrounded by other buffalo, and they no longer were starving to death. So when this calf was born, different tribes, there were, I think, 7 different tribal members, you know, from different tribes that came over to the Bitterroot. And I was invited by this wolf warrior elder of the Blackfeet to her naming ceremony. And they did the drumming, and it was just beautiful. And they named her in English, Creator's White Maiden Buffalo. And the message, they said, is there will be change, positive change, and that she's a sign of hope. And this will happen within 30 months, and that women will lead. Still makes me emotional, that women will lead this front, that men will support, but the women will be the leaders. So I just wanted to share that, because I think when we all get so frustrated and challenged and discouraged, just to kind of remember there's a lot more in play here, and good will prevail.
Love that, Casey. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kristin.
That is exactly kind of what I wanted to say, Casey. You just summed it up so great that, you know, we're facing challenges bigger than we've ever faced before, but we also have to remember that we are a force to be reckoned with and that change is coming. Like there is a revolution happening here within, you know, state wildlife management and the way that our large carnivores are managed. And, you know, we can't, you know, we can't give up. We can't, I mean, people that were working for civil rights and women's right to vote and all that stuff have gone through these challenges too. And we have to remember to stick together. We have to remember to support each other. And we have to remember that every little action that we do leads up to a big amount at the end. So, you know, even if you're in Massachusetts or Florida or Michigan or wherever, you can help wolves. Contact your Congress people, let them know it's important to you, and yeah, don't lose hope or you know, lose sight of this, because it's coming. Change is happening. It's slower than we all want, and we just have to remember that we got to be there for the wolves. So thanks a lot for everybody. Thank you so much for everybody for being here and, you know, finding out what you can do to help them.
Thank you for ending on that note. I think it's really, really important. I mean, all of us here, we have a purpose, everybody, and I think we need to remember that it's really important for us to continue and support each other in that purpose, and we got to stick together and fight. So thank you for your honesty and your knowledge and your wisdom and your strength